Is Dubai still a 0% tax haven in 2025? Well, for years, Dubai has been sold as the ultimate tax paradise by many. Recently, things have become a bit more complex, and today I'm going to break down exactly who could still move there for tax benefits, who might now want to reconsider, and some common areas of confusion. All right, so let's get this started. So, first of all, thanks for being with me. This experiment number one, a lot of people asked me to share my experience specifically with regard to Dubai. Before I start, as always in this case, please don't take this as a legal or tax or investment advice or financial advice of sort. So it's very important to stress out that I'm not currently registered in any barrister or bar association. Although I would be qualified to practice law, I enjoy building products, and I'm generally here to with the goal of trying to develop an interpretative framework of different opportunities for global citizens and learning also from the back and forth. So if there is something here unclear or not updated, please don't hold me accountable. So this is an introduction for giving you, at least from my perspective, in my view, the top key insights from, in this specific case, from the jurisdictions in Dubai and specifically the Emirate of Dubai. And it's a continuous learning process for everybody, including for me. With that, all that said, so Dubai 0% tax reality in 2025. Why Dubai is still a great opportunity for many, eventually not for all. So let's address first of all the topic of personal tax freedom. So for individuals, Dubai still means 0% essentially on every form of taxation, which means personal income tax, 0% tax on interest and dividends, and 0% capital gain tax, 0% inheritance tax, of course, any zero on wealth, luxury taxes, and so far and so on. Now, how do you establish your residency in Dubai? So the tax residency on the Dubai side, upon certain condition, of course, is 90 days. So this means that within 90 days, the change occurred in March 2023, if I'm not wrong, the Dubai authority will release for you the tax certificate. You read this correctly. So from the Dubai side, you don't need to be there 183 days. Of course, it's very important and worth to remind you that fiscal residency is established when you spend more than half of the year, or specifically 183 days in a specific country. There are also exceptions. So there are, for example, the US have different requirements. So please double check. Now, what does it mean in very short terms? You may be a digital nomad. You may be someone willing to spend the whole year in Dubai. This doesn't change the fact that you can actually validly acquire fiscal residency in Dubai. Now, as always, and also from my personal perspective, I don't think in general terms you should ever prioritize your decisions based exclusively on taxation. I do believe that a certain amount of tax burden is a positive effect, and I always encourage to contribute to the local economies and communities in one way or in another. At the same time, excessive burden, in my view, it's a stop it's objectively a challenge for growth, and for growth-oriented persons or businesses, Dubai can still be a great opportunity. So for now, we are actually addressing the personal tax freedom topic under this specific angle. I think Dubai at this point is unbeaten. It can't be beaten. Why? Because if we don't consider for a moment the corporate impact, 0% effective tax on everything is essentially guarantees you peace of mind. So if you hold crypto, if you hold stocks, essentially you don't care. This doesn't come without shortcomings, as we will see very shortly. Okay. So in very brief terms, is it an elite setup in 2025 and potentially onwards? Of course, there have been changes in tax landscape, especially on corporate. So we will address them very, very, very shortly. And first and foremost, let's address the business tax reality. Things have changed. How? In June 2023, but then the effectiveness actually, if I'm not wrong, starts this year. A new corporate tax has been introduced, and specifically the corporate tax equivalent to 9%. There is a threshold. So above a certain threshold, you will pay these 9% taxes. Below this threshold, you should not pay. The threshold is equivalent to about $100,000 US dollars, which is the local 375K in dirhams. There has been an introduction of the VAT for local commerce. I remember when I was living in Dubai, this was and still was perceived as a major change. When it comes to Dubai, I think it's important to always keep in mind that this necessary evolution has been made in order to accommodate, the global needs in terms of, to match a global standard in terms of taxation and avoid, if possible, the status of blacklisted country for Dubai. So there has been, I would define, in the last 2 decades at least, a process of normalization of Dubai as a jurisdiction. And as far as I know, but again, comes more from chats with local experts rather than my direct experience, probably this whole plan of creating from nothing, actually, Dubai as an emirate, from, of course, the big and older sister, I would say, Abu Dhabi, was planned with top global experts, I think initially also by McKinsey. Now, independently from the history and how we got here, things changed starting in 2023. So imagine that before that, there was 0% on actually corporate tax, and especially in the free zones. The free zones, because prior to that, it was, I remember friends were telling me these stories, you had to have the local partner in order to have a local company, as still happens in other jurisdictions. And over the years, this mandatory actually presence of the local partner got removed. And again, when it comes to optimal and tax-friendly jurisdictions, changes are in the end, on the agenda of almost every quarter or every year. Now, let's address probably Dubai from a global context perspective. If we tackle this topic from a tax efficiency perspective, according to global standards, I would say that Dubai with 9% is still extremely attractive. There is a reason why eventually they have chosen 9% rather than, 12, 15, 18, and so far and so on. You can easily compare the corporate tax burden here with jurisdictions you're familiar with. And probably the correct statement and conclusion is to address the fact that although this is still a very competitive environment and potential opportunity for your business, the competitive eventually edge is narrowing as we evolve. Now, the tax landscape has evolved quite a lot. First of all, there has been the introduction of excise taxes, the VAT, the corporate tax, and then domestic minimum top-up tax for multinationals. As I was telling you, and I always find myself writing, the true zero tax jurisdictions have been reduced over the years, and probably, we should probably start entering in a sort of mindset where the 100% zero tax jurisdiction may become at a certain point a fairy tale, and maybe that's not what you want to have or want to seek for. Besides, other, I would say, considerations coming from how righteous is to pay a certain amount of tax, I think there are efficient tax exemption methodologies or territorial tax systems worldwide that can constitute actually a great balance for you and your family or your business. Now, does Dubai still have, free zones where I can pay zero taxes? This is an important question. So, as far as I know, and this is a very slippery topic, okay, the answer is, well, officially, yes. There are qualifying free zone persons and qualifying income that can be exempt from taxation. One of these categories is constituted by holding companies. So in certain free zones, according to their own specific regulation, there is a list, and according to law, there could be qualified exempt income. So technically, yes, there could be certain sectors where if your company is in a free zone, you may be entitled to 0% taxes still in 2025. This topic, although, is very complex. So I strongly invite you to double check carefully with your advisor. I had a long chat with a friend of mine who has been actually a leading lawyer in Dubai for, over 15 years, I would say almost 20. And for what I can share, I can simply share that this topic is slippery, even if you belong to a qualified eventually category. For example, manufacturing. For people in tech, for digital nomads, guys, to be very frank, except holding companies, there is at least it doesn't seem to me, there is a specific category. With that said, I'm not right now in Dubai. I'm not dealing with these matters every day. So please double check. This is a delicate point. And in my view, again, even if there is 9%, please keep in mind that there is the threshold. So above 100K you pay, below 100K you don't pay. So if you are a freelancer, you are a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, I think you can eventually manage it. If not, you consider differently. Now, what are the typical free zones? This is another question that sometimes people actually ask. I don't know all of them very well. I know most of them. I quite trusted consultants in Dubai with whom I worked for years. My take is that there is no one single free zone that is better than the other. There are amazing opportunities out there. And the most renowned, in my view, are the DMCC, the Dubai Multi-Commodity Center. My friend has assisted multiple clients in this specific free zone, especially if you deal with crypto. And along with the DFC, the very notorious DFC, which has, by the way, an amazing physical facility, even during, if you want to hang out during evening or night. This is, these two can constitute for sure a great choice. Dubai Internet City, it's not in downtown, but closer to the Dubai Marina area. I personally had good experience with that as well. So, but that said, please double check. There are, I think, if I'm not wrong, over 40 free zones in Dubai. So I'm sure you will find the one that matches and at best your own needs. Now, what are probably the hidden opportunities or eventually elements that you should consider? Now, you can still optimize between personal and business income depending on your own setup. Your own setup, as a recap, in most cases will be either having a freelance license or incorporating a company there, if we exclude for a moment the golden visa route. So either you get a license for being an autonomous freelancer, or you have to incorporate a legal entity with which to do business. It doesn't change for the purpose of taxation, it changes for the cost of maintenance. Usually the golden rule here, but please ask your advisor, is that if you are two people, generally speaking, the cost is neutral between this choice. Why? Because the maintenance cost of a company, inclusive eventually of accountancy, and sometimes including also of quarterly VAT report, is more or less the same of a freelance license. So please double check with your advisor, but in general terms, unless you are purely solo, in general terms, probably the cost of maintaining a company is equivalent. That said, there could be always some hidden costs, especially regarding accountancy and maintenance. So ask in advance, in my view, always by writing quotes and find the right partner to handle with all these complexities. Keep in mind that in both cases, you will have 0% tax if your total revenue in a specific fiscal year is below 375k dirham or 102,000 US dollars. Now, who should be eventually considering Dubai? And this is the part that, in my view, is more interesting. Before I get there, I didn't remember to put in the diagram, but consider always another golden rule, guys, which is the maintenance cost of your own stack in Dubai. It has some costs. So there are for sure costs for maintaining the licenses there. And that's a sort of quote unquote indirect tax that it was present even before the recent changes in the corporate fiscal regime. So what do I mean? Have always in mind, in my view, and again, please double check, there is always between ballpark 6-7K per year to spend across visa renewal, insurance, mandatory insurance. So the minimum amount of compliance burden that you need to have will cost you always a few K per year. This cost can a bit change, but it can't actually go below, as I remember, 5K. At that time, I was very cost sensitive. I made tons of considerations and comparative analysis, and I actually helped a lot of friends with whom I was building startups, etc., to relocate and consider Dubai. So out of passion and I was quite intrigued by studying this opportunity. And for me, it made sense because I had team members in India. I lived in India also when I was based in Dubai. Dubai, India is quite close as a flight. So it was a strategic move for me for my own interest. So coming back to the main point, keep in mind that compared to European setups or Thailand or many other setups worldwide, Dubai still has a minimum annual cost, which is sometimes not so clear. Okay, so you need to please double check and consider in advance. In any case, especially if you have stocks So unless you are a complete, completely at the beginning of your own career, unless you are very young and somehow you don't have assets on the side, eventually which are producing passive income, in general terms, unless, again, you're really at the beginning, the benefits of this potential setup outweigh by far the negative aspects. With that said, who should consider Dubai? Well, I know high-income employees based in Dubai with companies or subsidiaries in Dubai or UAE in general, or not. This is a structure I saw many tech companies, especially in Web3, very rarely in AI for now, applying, and in crypto, this made a lot of sense. I'm not going to mention some names, but I think I'm referring to leading companies that you for sure know. Small business owners under 100K per year of threshold, this could be a great opportunity, but please always keep in mind that the banking system in Dubai, not always, or the UAE is not necessarily too much, I would say, digital friendly, and collecting payments from worldwide to Dubai can always open to challenges. So third, if you want to get funding from professional venture capital firms, this is another set of complexity. The very long story short is that I would not do it in Dubai, and probably even your investors may not like this setup. If that's the case, either US or Singapore, stop. So this is the long story short. Both jurisdictions support effectively the simple agreement for future equity, Y Combinator style, and they are in general VC friendly. Dubai or the UAE for now is not among them. I'm not saying that this is impossible, but at least on my experience, I haven't seen this happening yet. If you need to go there are also other ways to structure, by the way, your eventually organization and corporate structure. So small business owners, again, with some conditions in my view, digital nomads and remote workers, in my view, in 2025, still Dubai constitutes probably one of the most actually setups that you can have for a series of, I would say, intertwined elements. And in my view, the 90 days tax certificate plays an important role. I would even suggest, if you want to be scrupulous, and I always invite everybody to be quite scrupulous in what they do, you need to have a place where you want to maintain your fiscal residency, right? So even if you are attracted by Thailand, the DTP visa, or the equivalent from Malaysia, fantastic, but still you need a place where you need to keep your residency. And with 90 days per year and the services in Dubai are great. So you can literally arrive in the city, book an hotel and an Uber, and everything is frictionless. So you can spend 90 days there, and eventually you can go full digital nomad mode and not actually spend more than half of the year in any other specific country. This could be one setup. There are, of course, other 100 really as valuable as this one. Now, also freelancers with flexible income structures. Yeah, this is in general potentially a valid actually combination for you. Please consider. I already addressed employees eventually that are maybe on the higher spectrum of salaries, and in general for all these categories, but not only, also of course entrepreneurs and why not founders, the benefits are, you can benefit of a world-class infrastructure. You have an incredibly central location, in essence, with exception for the US and South America, if you need to spend time in South America for all your businesses there. With that exception of that area of the world, Dubai is exceptionally connected. This means, and in terms of time zone, is fully compatible. That's why you usually, but not always, you find in Dubai so many Europeans, or a lot of people from the UK are moving to the UAE and Dubai specifically for this reason, because time zone wise, it's still achievable, it can work. If you need to start working with San Francisco, for example, you can try, but it's going to be, in my view, effortful. So you may end up, not enjoying the process. Let's put it in these terms. And of course, the airport in Dubai, especially nowadays, many airports actually have caught up, I would say. But a few years ago, I still remember the first time I went to Dubai. For me, it was quite magic, and the airport was a display of efficiency and why not also a bit of wealth that was, for me at least, completely unprecedented. So yeah, I would absolutely consider the central location. Let's also keep in mind that once you get your Emirates ID, you have a fast track route for getting in and out from the airport. So the efficiency, the experience, generally speaking, is quite good. Now, there are also, 1 year renewable remote working visa and so far and so on. These are all elements that I think you can also study by yourself. You can ask your advisor and so far and so on. Now, probably if I have to select one single skill, in my view, that made Dubai great also for networking and business, it has been the capacity of this place to attract and very often retain talent. Talent in 2025, in 2030, in the next 10 years, talent will be the most difficult, actually, resource for any country in the world to retain. Why? Because in a global and borderless world, talent is the most fluid and dynamic energy. And it inevitably is, at this point of the journey, is nobody wants to remain in a place that doesn't treat you correctly or doesn't match your expectations for various reasons. So what I'm trying to say is Dubai made an excellent job, I would say, in also, attracting and retaining talents. Also, the general vibe that you have when you deal also with local authorities and specifically the free zones is they want to help you there, which, by the way, is the opposite experience, I would say, sadly, in many other places. Lifestyle. But before we go there, I actually prepared, a few other notes, okay? Let's always keep in mind, but this would be a sort of white rabbit hole that you can also stack and combine different kind of jurisdictions. You should actually, and eventually you can combine a local company or a freelance license with eventually businesses abroad, especially if you travel in that place, if you spend time in that place. So there is substance, you can achieve some eventually better terms also in terms of corporate tax, eventually, to be double checked. But most importantly, maybe you can maybe have easiness in, for example, getting paid from certain areas of the world for whom sometimes it's challenging to pay companies in Dubai. Again, this is by my experience. There are different angles. We would need to go much more in detail in order to be accurate on this specific statement. Okay. With that said, I leave it to you for further, analysis. Let's keep in mind that although there is no the control policy as such in Dubai, there is a similar one based on the effectiveness of the management in any case. So keep this in consideration for your own reasons and in general for your own purpose. For founders, again, I already partially touched these points. There can be VC funding challenges in terms of compatibility of the jurisdiction. The banking system can be challenging for crypto. And on the other side, again, as I was mentioning, strong communities, strong networks, and welcoming authorities. Also, one last point that I wanted to, and I always mention, is tax should be one of the factors you consider, but should not be the exclusive factor that you base your decision upon. Why? Because there are indirect costs that in most cases will rebalance eventually a tax burden. I always make this example. Compare it to a potential European alternative or choice besides other lifestyle factors that we will look into now. If you have 2 kids in Dubai, you will pay quite a lot of money for schooling. And this is something that, for example, is well understood from Americans, but in general, Europeans never really eventually take in consideration this aspect. I do invite you to factor in these costs for yourself and your family, because if you save 50K or 30K of taxes, but you need to pay 60 in schooling, well, eventually this is not, probably this is not going to be the best investment decision for yourself, right? So this is, in my view, one key factor when you address this whole topic of, Dubai, zero taxes. It depends. It depends. Of course, the fact of having zero and the peace of mind that comes with it, in my view, is unparalleled. Of course, not zero, exit taxes or other things. So, lifestyle. I could literally spend here so much time, but I will keep it very short. Overall, it's great, and it's very subjective. So my take could not be matching your personal experience. If so, drop a comment. I think net Dubai can be a bit artificial at times, and in general, there could be a sort of sometimes of feeling of we are all here for a reason, and somehow it could look like, okay, it could give you the vibe of we are all sharing a very beautiful, efficient, large-sized hotel. On the other hand, it's an ideal place for going for real in building mode, and I, at least from my personal perspective, I always associate Dubai to a zero noise place. Why I use these words? Because in my view, we live in certain cities, especially for people coming from south of Europe, for example, where even moving around the city is, it takes your energy. So when you arrive to the office, eventually you arrive already tired, okay? I don't know if this resonates. In Dubai, besides traffic on Sheikh Zayed Road, sometimes, in Dubai, this doesn't happen. So you really literally, in my view, the fact that, of course, Dubai is in the Middle East, in the desert, that's a kind of, that's how I also envision Dubai from a lifestyle and energy perspective. It's a sort of desert in the good sense, which means there is no, and it's not empty, it's the opposite, of course, but there is no distraction. And at the same time, you see and experience a city that a few decades ago, for sure after 1970 or 90, and even in the 1990s of the last century, it was almost at zero. So you see with your own eyes what does it mean to live in a place that in a few decades built itself, and this factor in the subconscious eventually transfers to you the idea of, well, everything is possible actually, which is the opposite probably of Europe, sadly right now. So these factors, one on top of the other, in my view, make Dubai a fantastic place. Although, to be fair, sometimes it could feel artificial, but this is also a matter of perspectives. And as somebody told me once, and it was very funny, it was like, the joke was, because I'm from Rome and this guy was from the north of Italy, and it was like an older guy, like in his 60s, and he was mentioning, yeah, but what does it mean even to be artificial, right? Also, Rome is artificial, is made by humans, but the difference is that Rome was probably made 2,700 and so far and so on years ago versus something made 50 years ago. So this was the joke. So I don't know what's your interpretation, and of course, where you tend to lean, but I mean, this is just a joke of I think my message, can be, I would say, it should be clear enough. And my take is, this is of course a generalization, don't take it literally, but if you're in your 20s in building mode, in grinding mode, this is one of the best places you can be. It's not the only one. Especially when you really want to build something and do something, you carry that willingness and energy within yourself. You don't need necessarily a place, but eventually you need a network, you need friends, and so far and so on. And in my view, especially in 2025, when you have access to via the internet to X, for example, you build your network from wherever you are. That said, to be physical in a place where it's easier to connect, it's easier to have a coffee, to have proximity with people, and why not with talent, helps a lot. So in my view, we live in a sort of, sometimes something is true, but also the opposite. The exact opposite is true. And this is one of those arguments in my view. When I'm totally sure that you can build your own network with a computer and an internet connection, but at the same time, I'm experiencing this especially in Lisbon or in Singapore, when you meet constantly every week and you organize aperitifs and networking events, and you maybe, I don't know, play tennis or you do CrossFit or whatever you do, and you meet people and friends, and you create that sense also of bonding with people, not necessarily sharing your same business ideas or business goals, or maybe they are even in a different phase of life, that adds value. And that's why San Francisco ultimately, or New York, are still San Francisco and New York. And probably they are, even before the potential taxation changes Trump will introduce, they were tier one, top of the top. So I don't want to make further comparisons, but I think this is a balanced view of pros and cons from a personal perspective, of course. Great place overall. So who should consider Dubai? There are 2,000 different ideal customer persona. There is, I have seen or met so many different profiles, from founders, builders, employees, team members, investors who are simply in allocation, investing and curating their own investments and own assets. Businesses with even, profits below or after threshold. Still, Dubai can be an excellent choice for almost everyone, eventually not for all. So what are my conclusions for this breakdown that I hope you appreciate? When it comes to Dubai, in my view, there is always, you get something, you leave on the table something. My personal experience, at least, has been I had easiness to create network and friends in different places. We eventually, because we faced in different places more challenges to live there. So sometimes when everything is so perfect, and by default, it could lack of spontaneity, right? On the other hand, I think Dubai specifically, and the UAE in general, and Abu Dhabi could be also a great choice. In my view, is an amazing opportunity for many out there, and probably the best if you want to have complete peace of mind with those challenges that unfortunately in these years actually affect other places of the world, including eventually, you live and you have constant impact on, of politics related events. Dubai is noise zero for them, of course, because of a different system in place. So I'm not taking a position, be aware. So before I'm presenting to you what I've seen and pros and cons. This would require, of course, a broader consideration from a macro political and sociological perspective. With that said, so it can be exceptional for individuals in different roles. It can be competitive for businesses with, of course, proper planning required in any case. So you must have someone guiding you. There is no alternative. I don't do consultancy personally, okay? I build products and companies, and there will be eventually dedicated teams if you want to explore further. Key takeaway for future relocation considerations: start planning earlier, and eventually spend a few weeks before moving there, connect with people actually living there, and choose before even the logistic. For example, if you want to be in Dubai Marina versus Dubai downtown as an area. Stay always updated on changes, and in my view, as always, before relocating, especially if with family, connect locally also with a few consultants or lawyers, and then select the one that you believe to be more in bandwidth with overall. So this is my breakdown of Dubai 0% tax reality in 2025, which is still partially true, and for sure, certainly true with regard to personal taxation matters. It is not necessarily still true with regard to the corporate tax aspect, but of course, there can be exceptions, and there is, of course, this important threshold to mention. Conclusive notes: it will always cost you, for every family member, a few K per year, besides the tax component. And probably at this stage, Dubai, in my view, still represents the number one choice for freedom seekers and those ones prioritizing personal freedom. This world is complex, so there is no perfect choice, and every topic can be framed or can be explained from a different perspective or eventually criticized. So I'm trying to give you my fairly unfiltered opinion, especially because I'm interested in learning. So if you have also questions or points that you believe should be addressed differently or in a more detailed way, drop a comment. I will try. I'm going to improve, and I'm trying to build an overall framework and also learn from potential observations or criticisms. Thank you so much for being with me. I'm going to, I think, do the same with so many places. I haven't lived in all of them, but for a good portions of them, I will rely on experience of friends or at least very good acquaintances of mine. With in general, I always want to. Before doing these videos, I always spend at least 1 hour with a senior lawyer to double check at least the most important points regarding one place.